Welcome everyone to the California Water Safety Coalition Lunch and Learn webinar series, Drowning Prevention for Populations with Special Needs. This is the second webinar in our newly created series. My name is Matthew Barnes, and I, along with Mike and Ganamort, are supporting the California Water Safety Coalition's Board of Directors on standing up the organization, including strategic planning and implementation support for the early phase of the coalition's work. Before we get started, I wanted to run through some housekeeping items. We are in a webinar, so your camera and microphone have been turned off, but the chat is available. So we encourage you now to introduce yourselves in the chat. Name and organization is great. And as we go through this discussion, feel free to drop in comments or questions, and we'll try to get to those towards the end of the session. And if it's necessitated, we can follow up with folks individually after the call, not to answer any lingering or remaining questions. We are recording this session, so we will make it available on our website very soon. I just want to make sure folks are hearing me okay and seeing me okay before I continue. Okay, thank you, Will. So on the heels of the California Water Safety Coalition Summit that I'm imagining many of you on this call attended, that we held in March, we sent out a survey to get feedback from attendees and hear what topics folks wanted to learn more about. And water safety for populations with special needs was something people expressed interest in. So we've pulled together two experts in this space whom we'll be introducing momentarily to share their knowledge and insights. The goal for today is to better inform stakeholders and coalition participants on the topic of drowning prevention for populations with special needs, including defining the challenge, the risks and effective mitigation efforts, and hopefully ideas for how we as a coalition can advance this work. Our hope is that people leave this webinar with ideas and actionable how-tos that are applicable to different stakeholders. This conversation has fresh significance. In Lawrence, Kansas, 5 days ago, a child with autism, Xavier Rigney, was pulled by a neighbor from an apartment complex pool after being submerged for nearly 3.5 minutes. Mercifully, Xavier survived and is well, but it's a reminder of the risks. We have with us today two individuals with decades of experience working with populations with special needs in and around water and keeping them safe. Tammy Anderson Lee has extensive and storied history with aquatics, swim instruction, and competitive swimming. In fact, she's been instructing and coaching competitive swimming for the past 46 years. Not sure how that's possible. Tammy is the owner of AquaPro's swim schools. And during this time with her business, she's developed an expertise working with individuals with special needs, particularly those, but not exclusively those, with autism. And she literally wrote the book on the topic, Swimming with Autism. Welcome, Tammy.
Well, thanks for having me, Matthew. And it was so great to even get the call to even be participating in this, because it is such a needed area for everybody in aquatics to understand a little bit more in depth.
Thank you. We're thrilled to have you. Marianne Sullivan is a nationally recognized advocate for people with autism and their families. She serves as Managing Director of Programs and Services for the West for Autism Speaks. Marianne leads outreach and partnership development, including a major grant initiative to support water competence education. She's been with the organization for 20 years. Welcome, Marianne.
Thank you for having me.
So before we talk about the risks and mitigation efforts associated with populations with special needs, I think a good place to start, because we often talk about the risks and we often talk about those mitigation efforts. That's sort of what consumes this community. But I think it's important to talk about the benefits associated with being in and around and experiencing water, particularly for these populations. So I guess I'll start with you, Marianne. Could you talk a little bit about the benefits for special needs populations and maybe help define, it's not just autism, but cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, et cetera. So what are some of the benefits of being in and around water? And then we'll also want to hear from Tammy on that as well.
Well, one of the, thank you for having us, Autism Speaks, Matthew. I appreciate it, because we've been focused on swimming initiatives and safety for many, many years now. But as you just mentioned, drownings continue to happen. So our job is not done as of yet. One of the benefits, I think, of water is it's accessible for families. And when I say that, I think I have a 30-year-old son with autism. And one of the things I remember when he was growing up is the pool and going to the beach was accessible and inclusive for us. We could go there. We didn't necessarily have to worry about whether or not we were offending people, or my son was too loud, or all those things that can happen when you go in public with a special needs child. And so one of the things that it's an opportunity to get out, to explore and have fun for families, not just for the individual with special needs. And many times, when done safely and given the right tools, it can be a lifelong learning experience. Swimming can be a team sport, it can be a solo sport. So we truly encourage those kinds of activities. The autism prevalence rate is going up. There are going to be more and more children who are going to require and need safety tools and learning how to swim in America. And we know that. Gone are the days of institutions and people keeping their children at home and not coming out to the community. Today, I would challenge everyone on our call today probably knows someone with autism. 30 years ago, when my son was diagnosed, nobody knew what autism even was. Or very rarely people would say, oh yes, I know somebody with autism. Today, everybody knows somebody with autism. So again, people are in the community, they're out there, they are participating. And one of the things that I think it has a tremendous impact on the family. It's one more opportunity to create an activity where the entire family can have fun.
That's really useful. And I think this idea of inclusivity, accessibility,
yes,
that it's one of the rare things for, in particular, individuals with autism, where they're welcome, they can participate. And then that's not true in all circumstances and all different activities. So that's really,
that's right.
Really, I would, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to mention, I mean, of course, there's the health benefit of exercise and swimming. Yeah. So many kids with special needs are not likely, they may have low tone, they may not be interested in necessarily exercise, may be a couch potato. Swimming is one of those ways you get in the pool, you have fun. And as I said, it can be, pretty high level team sport, or it could be a solo sport. So we all know exercise is very, very good for us.
That's a good segue. Maybe come over to you, Tammy, and talk a little bit about some of the benefits you're seeing. You're in the pool with these individuals. What are some of the benefits you're seeing? And if you could speak broadly, or
broadly, yeah. So we've seen amazing things happen in the pool with not only kids with autism, but with different disabilities. Like right now, I'm working with a student who's 21 years old. He has a traumatic brain injury. And so being in the water with all the therapeutic benefits, you've got the hydrostatic pressure, you got the viscosity, you've got the turbulence, all this stuff, plus the wakefulness of being in the water, which really helps to benefit when they're working in the water. So he's gained some muscle tone. He's actually done a lot for kids with autism. I would have to say that one of our parents said that the water is like the golden elixir for kids with autism, because we've had things in the past where we've had speech therapists work with students in the water that actually gain vocabulary from the kids. But just all in all, the water is the #1 best medium for those with disabilities for numerous reasons why. And it's something that should be available to all of those with special needs.
Mhm.
Very good. Thanks. Thank you, Tammy. So there's obvious sort of therapeutic benefits for a broad spectrum of individuals with special needs. We talked before the call about individuals with a cerebral palsy. The weightlessness that they experience allows them to move and build muscle tone and move in ways that they're not able to outside the water. So
Right.
that's
And additionally, like those with autism, they have sensory issues. So the water acts as like a blanket or a big hug. So there's a lady, her name's Temple Grandin, and she used to talk about how she would go in these squeeze boxes. And so the water actually does the same type of thing for the children or the adults that are swimming. It helps calm their sensory issues, and it helps them to really focus in on what they're doing. That's why we were successful with speech therapy, because the sensory actually calmed them from being in the water. So yeah, the water's just, it's magic happens in the water.
So there's a flip side, of course,
Right.
to the idea of water being a big hug and water being an environment in which individuals feel comfortable. And that is the risks associated with being drawn to water. And so what I wanted to talk about now and hear from you all a little bit about kind of helping us define the challenge. For folks on the call, we've talked about the benefits, but we know there are risks. And these risks represent a challenge we want to start to try to solve for. So if I'll start with you, Tammy, if you could talk a little bit about the risks associated with different bodies of water for populations with special needs.
Okay, so to be honest, when I was trying to find statistics on all different disabilities, there was very few out there except for the autism statistics, which we all, or maybe not a lot of you know, but autism, 91% of all deaths occur from drowning. And then not only that, but those with autism are 160 times more likely to drown than their peers. And then the prevalence rate has changed. So it's now 1 in 44 born with autism, but in California specifically, it's 1 in 26. So when you think of those statistics and you think of the impact of how many people live in the state of California, that's a huge number that we need to define, and we also need to educate on. And the reason for the higher statistic is because of the higher rate of wandering for those with autism. Whereas somebody with CP or somebody with Down syndromes may not have the propensity to wander. For those with autism, that is a huge risk just right there alone. So that would be like one of the big challenges. The other challenge is that there's a lack of swim instructors that are fully educated on working with those with autism, and the lack of parent education. Just for an example, I'm teaching a home pool for a family. They have a 3-year-old son with autism. I went over there last week. They're in the process of moving. So they were moving from their house into another house, and they have to stay in an Airbnb for 2 weeks. So I went over to the Airbnb to go teach the little guy, and there was no barriers around the pool. There's no alarm system. There was nothing. And here's a 3-year-old child with autism in an unfamiliar territory, and this is a huge recipe for disaster. So I immediately, when I got done, because the mom was not home, it was just the nannies, I immediately called the mom and I'm like, hey, look, you have got to get an alarm, something on this, because this is a huge issue. And she was like, oh, thanks for letting me know. Like, that is where I come from, is educating the parents more, because they are unaware, and it has to be something. It's almost to the point where I think us as California, we should have some kind of something when a child is born in the hospital, that the parents there get some kind of information on drowning, on maybe autism risk and drowning, but to really get those parents to really seriously think about enrolling their children as infants in classes. If we could do that, then most of the kids wouldn't, before they were even diagnosed with, say, autism, could have the skills to be competent in the pool, at least for that. And then,
Yeah.
or,
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I was just going to follow up because I very
Yeah.
much agree with what you're saying in terms of it's really the focus. It should be on the parent and the caregiver in terms of just making awareness and outreach. But what we have found is that some parents are still stigmatized about bringing children out into a public agency or community pool where they feel that the child will be, disruptive, have behavioral issues. And many parents stay at home and do not pursue what the opportunities are in the community for safe swimming lessons.
Right. And then there's a lack within the communities to even have programs like special needs specific programs. I think every county or every city across the state should have at least one special needs specific program, and specifically an autism program within their community, just to help address this need. But going along the parent education end too, the other thing that is extremely concerning to me, and it's not just for kids with autism, it's the use of flotation devices. So it's basically the armband floaties, the puddle jumpers, all that stuff, which are great for open water, but in a pool setting, they should not be allowed. And they specifically shouldn't be allowed at all for those with autism. Reason being, as we know, the kids, when they have drowned prior, is because they're wandering. And so if these kids are comfortable and have a false sense of security because they've been bobbing around in their pool with a floaty on, then when they flee and they take off, they're not going to stop and grab the puddle jumper on the way out the door. So that's why these kids definitely need to be taught something about water safety, and the parents need to be educated on not allowing the flotation devices to become security devices for them. And then the parents, we all know, us aquatic people know how terrible those things are. The parents get complacent. It's just that would be a good step in the right direction, is educating the parents on the these kids need to learn how to swim without flotation.
I know for myself, when I took my son for swimming lessons when he was younger, there were a lot of agencies that said that they could not work with him because he had autism. And I was horrified at that, because I know, living in California, we're at the pool, we're at the beach, and lots of things involving water. So it took me actually 3 or 4 different tries to get swimming lessons for him. So, persevering and asking the right questions, like, Tammy is saying, there's so many more than there were 10 years ago, but it can be a quick, it's a quick question. Do you provide swimming lessons for the special needs population? And then from there on, inquire a little bit more about, and Tammy, you probably know a lot about certifications or experiences. How does somebody find out that this instructor is qualified to teach people with autism?
Very good point. We can probably get to that in a minute.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. But so we're talking about, particularly with respect to autism, but across the spectrum of special needs categories, we're talking about a sizable and growing population of individuals. We're talking about a propensity to be drawn to water. And I know that's true also, although slightly less so, for individuals with Down syndrome. That's wandering is an experience my sister struggles with her son with Down syndrome. The lack of infrastructure or training associated with instruction for individuals. And then you also highlighted the sort of infrastructure issues like fences, redundant fencing, alarms, etc. That's true as a challenge, not just for populations with special needs, but more broadly. So could any additional, I'll just ask you, Marianne, any additional risks that you see that we all need to be alert to, or that our towns and municipalities, our aquatics programs, et cetera, should be alert to?
I think one of the major symptoms of autism is people experiences challenges with social communication and social interaction. So these are possibilities. This doesn't happen to all people with autism, but people may not respond when you call their name. They have difficulty showing what their wants or needs are without words. You can imagine probably 50% of the population of autism is nonverbal. They do not use words or language to communicate. So there's a loss of speech, communication, and some play skills. So it's not likely that they're going to be able to respond to just anyone. So, a neighbor in the pool, yes, if you're physically redirecting them, that would be something that you could offer. But most people don't realize those social communication skills and language skills truly impact somebody's ability to learn and to participate in a lesson.
There's one other thing I wanted to add about for the parents as well. And then that was the fact that, oh, wait.
We want to focus on risks, and then what we'll do is we'll talk. I want to hear a little bit about what you're doing, Tammy, as it relates to addressing this challenge, and as well as from Marianne, but please go ahead.
Yeah, but what I was going to say was educating the parents on the risk of knowing where all the bodies of water are within within a 1 mile radius of their own home, because that's really key. So if their child does go wander, that they can alert EMS staff to hit these places of water first. It could be a golf course, pond, it could be a creek, it could be a river, it could be the neighbor's swimming pool. And for the parents to alert the neighbors around that their child does have autism, so then that if their child wanders, that they can actually help and look for them and make sure that they haven't wandered into their own backyard pool. But that just something like that I just wanted to iterate on. But I think there's great opportunities too that people don't realize for us as aquatic people, that once you start working in the special needs community, and especially those with autism, because it becomes their number one thing to do, to go swimming, you get huge longevity with these kids in your programs. I have 2 brothers that have been swimming in my program on Tuesdays at 5:30 for over 20 years now. And it's just because it's been their one chosen activity that they love, and they've been coming. So you get great longevity with your students as well.
So Tammy, talk a little bit about your programming and your work with special needs populations. And I think what we have on the call here are, we're going to have parents, we're also going to have life-saving professionals, parks and recreation officials, et cetera. So it would be good to sort of speak more generally about how you work with these individuals. What are some key tips to be mindful of so that you're successful as possible? And then, but speak to your specific experience. And then I'll kind of ask you all, what are things some of these different groups should be thinking about as it relates to their role in trying to mitigate the risks and danger associated with water for special needs populations. So Tammy, just talk a little bit about your work with your school.
Okay. So I've been working with those with autism specifically for over 25 years. And about 23 years ago, I went to a board meeting at the Autism Society and said, hey, I want to invite you and your families to come to the pool, and it'll be a great experience for them. And that was 23 years ago. And then they were kind of looking at me like I was a little bit crazy because I was really wanting to invite them. So with working with the Autism Society San Diego, we've developed what we call the Pool Pals program. So that's persons with autism learning to swim. And within that program, we have one-on-one private swim lessons and scholarships that we provide for the students. Then we also have monthly family pizza pool party nights, which is a great way for the families to get together. And those have been going on for 20-something years as well. And then we also have our summer surf camp that we have at La Jolla Shores every year. And we've been doing that for 22 years as well. So with all the activities that we have done and all the programs that we have created, it just really helped our community as a whole to be more aware of the water, to be a lot of the parents, they've learned from other parents' experiences as well, especially at pizza pool parties. It's really great because you'll have somebody that's newly diagnosed with autism, and then you'll have a family that has a 30-year-old son with autism. So it's a great program for them. So what I've seen or teaching specifically, when I work with a student with autism, I use a lot of visuals. They're visual learners first, and people need to understand that they have a hard time with transition and change. So you have to kind of lay things out. And also when you instruct them, you use very few words. Like I would say something like, first put your face in, then blow bubbles, and then just leave it at that. I don't go into any big, huge explanation. It's just pretty much point blank. This is what we're doing. Using a lot of, like I said, visuals. I use pegboards. I have waterproof iPads. We have all kinds of stuff like that that we use with the kids. And that just really helps provide them with what they're seeking and communicating, because as the majority of the kids do not communicate and they have very limited verbal, it's been really beneficial to have all the visuals that we use at the swim school.
Great. Mary Ann, if you could speak a little bit to what your organization's done, Autism Speaks, and as it relates to supporting these communities.
Sure. I'd like to start with, in terms of our advocacy, we have an advocacy team that works out of Washington, D.C., and they lobby and work with government on very important issues. One of them happens to be safety. So our Autism Speaks introduced a federal law funding and implementing of Kevin and Avante's law that was passed in 2018. The law is named in honor of two boys with autism who drowned after wandering from school. Specifically, it's Justice Department funds that grants law enforcement agencies and other nonprofits to facilitate training and emergency protocols, provide first responder lists with additional information and resources, and also makes technology available to families and to caregivers. What that would be, there's a zillion of them on the market today, GPS and whatnot, but those things are very helpful. So we're very instrumental with Avante and Kevin's law, although obviously on a very sad reasons for doing that. We have also nationally provided safety fairs. This is kind of my favorite thing. The outreach team provides national safety fairs throughout the major cities in all over the country. We bring together first responders, which includes lifeguards, which includes swim schools, police department, fire department, search and rescue teams. We come together. It's a safety fair. That's a fun morning, usually on a Saturday morning for 2 hours, where families come, bring their children with special needs, and this is their opportunity to meet first responders in a non-crisis situation. Because typically, the child is meeting the police for the first time or lifeguards when there is a crisis. So, hopefully this is helpful for the kids. The police, they can get in the safety boat. They can wear, all kinds of, the equipment. They can ride in the police car. Everything to just kind of prepare them or to know that community helpers are there for them. So the safety fairs have been wildly successful. We do them. I know I did one, with COVID, it's been difficult, but we did our last one in Huntington Beach, California. They have a special summer, I think it's Wednesday nights, where they open up downtown for a street fair. We're part of those street fairs. I think this is what makes it so great, is you're there. It's not about a special needs fair. It's not that isolated. This is the community. And so we're there with all of the other agencies that provide services to the community. And it's a great formula, and I'm happy to share. Anyone can do a safety fair. So I'm certainly happy to share with our manual for how to do that. Just trying to look at, another favorite of mine is we offer swim scholarships to providers who understand and know special needs population. And we've done that for the past 7 years. So these are special needs friendly swim programs where we understand that people understand special needs and in terms of what the tools are that they need, how to work with families. So we're very proud of that. We have funded thousands and thousands of dollars towards swimming programs for swim lessons for families. This allows the family, we wanted to take away all the barriers to getting your child to learn how to swim. And one of the things that we felt was important is people may not have the funds. So scholarships were available, and a very successful program overall.
Fantastic. I think those are some, we're making note of those. And one of the things we confront in all aspects of drowning prevention and water safety is the shortage of funding. And knowing that there are programs out there, including in California, where people can access dollars to specifically support this, so that it is accessible to families that don't have the means to do that. So I think what would be useful now, it may be in sort of a lightning round piece, and we're not expecting you to have all the answers, but if we could sort of tick through thinking about who might be on the call here, starting with parents, what are some key things parents of children with special needs should be thinking about and planning for? That's one. And there may be opportunities for our organization and yours to facilitate and bring those conversations together. But parents, and then municipalities would also be an additional, that's encompassing first responders, parks and recreation, aquatics programming. What are things they should be aware of and alert to today so that they can sort of take and run with some ideas? And this may require additional conversations, but who would like to go first?
I'll go. All right.
Great.
You want to talk
Parents.
about parents first?
Yeah.
So for parents, just so they are aware of the safety issues, and like I said, no flotation devices really is key for the parents. And then also that there is, in the state of California, they just started a new funding through the regional center. So you can get grant, or you can get, if any child that is enrolled through a California regional center, they now have a program, and it's called Therapeutic Recreational Activities, and it's code 106. So my swim school is now newly vendorized. So for parents, if they go to their regional centers, they can request that they get the 106 funding, and that will pay totally their swim lessons for their child. So that's some great news. Now, for my buddies that are on here that own swim schools, this is a great opportunity for you too. If you become vendorized through the California regional centers, then you will be the beneficiary of these funds once the families of children with special needs, and it could be anything. It could be CP, it could be Downs, it could be autism. Anybody that is a part of the California Regional Center has access to these funds that will pay for their swimming lessons. So that's something great for everybody to know about that.
I love that you added the code. Because as we all know,
I used to, years and years ago, I was vendorized for our surf camp, but then the state of California ran out of funding, so they kind of knocked it off. But now they just brought it back, and with a lot of funding, so they were hounding me to do this, and so I'm like, okay. So I just resubmitted all the paperwork, so they're just going to start paying. But it is, just so you know, swim school owners and municipalities out there, it is a little bit of a paperwork headache at the beginning because they send you all kinds of stuff to fill out. But once you're vendorized, then you're golden, because then they make direct deposits and you don't have to wait for months and months on the back end. They do every 2 weeks. So they've kind of cleaned it up and they've made it a lot easier. So I would encourage anybody with a facility out there to really look into being vendorized through the regional center to help support these families.
So, you know, I did not know that, Tammy, and I'm very familiar with our regional center here. So just hearing that information for the first time, you can imagine how a parent of a newly diagnosed child may not be focused on swim lesson, but just having that information like, oh, okay, that's easily accessible. Let me put that on the list because that's really important. So I think it's twofold.
Therapeutic recreational services is what it's called.
Right.
So what we can do, I know Mike is dropping in links to various resources, including some of these items. What we can do is pull together sort of a comprehensive email that would go to attendees, and we'll also make it available on our website for these resources. We've talked about Kevin and Avante's law, and there's funds associated with that. The Therapeutic Recreational Activities 106 funding that Tammy's mentioned, as well as the Autism Speaks scholarship programming. I think, so that funding is available. I think there are people on this call who would be interested in understanding those, so we'll a bit more and availing themselves of it. Are there opportunities for municipalities, parks and recreation, et cetera, to get training for their employees, for their staffs, whether it's first responders, and I know San Diego has done a video series on interacting with individuals with special needs and how to handle situations like that. But are there opportunities for training for lifeguard, aquatic staff, first responders, specifically around working with individuals with special needs? And could we do more of that?
Yeah, well, for the past 11 years, we've done what's called a Swimming with Autism conference. And so we do a 2-day training. We have a classroom training one day, and then we have an in-water training on the second day. So we've been doing this will be our 11th year. And we've had people from all over the world that come and participate, because I think it's very valuable, especially for a swim instructor. And this would actually, training would be good for anybody, not necessarily just a swim instructor, but for them to get hands-on experience. So what I've learned is for swim instructors, they get a little gun shy if you're going to hand them a child that has any type of a disability. So with them having the 1 day in the water working with, and it's easy for me, I just get like 60 or 80 kids with autism, and then they come down to the pool, and then the instructors get to work with the kids in several different opportunities, that when they do go back into their community, they feel a little bit more confident in what they're doing. So we've been doing that for 10 years. I think you guys will have a link for our, we have a training coming up in October for that. Also, as a member of the United States Swim School Association, I helped to develop what's called the Special Abilities Training. And so we've been doing that now for over 10 years, and that encompasses all disabilities. So that's been a really great tool. And we've taught thousands of swim instructors across the country to have the basics, because we saw that there was such a great need for training. And even though there are some training things out there for autism, some of them I just don't feel are good enough for what the kids really need. So they're just kind of, vague.
Yeah.
So
let me jump in real quick. There's a lot of discussion around, and it sounds like programming and training around swim instruction for individuals with special needs. I'm wondering is there a gap in terms of training associated with the rescue and resuscitation rescue of individuals with special needs who've experienced a drowning or near drowning. Is that a gap, or does that exist? And where might we find some guidance on that?
I know here in San Diego, they've done a really good job of doing that. I mean, the video series, I think that you guys will see, that's been around at least 6-7 years, I believe. And Ralph Castillo, who is one of the firemen that started this, he has a child that has autism. So it was very near and dear to his heart to get the information out there. And it was such a great need for within the beach areas for the lifeguards and things like that, and fire rescue just as a whole. So in San Diego, I know we've touched on it. I don't know about other parts of California. Like, I don't know.
Well, I would
like
encourage anyone who's listening. Yeah, I would encourage anyone who's listening in, if you're aware of any programming specifically around rescue and related topics, because we know, particularly individuals with autism, how you approach an individual is really key. But in the context of a rescue in water is a very specific thing. So if there are any suggestions for programming or tips or trainings, please drop them into the chat, and we can chase them down and follow up with folks.
Can I
we have
comment
just
that? Oh, okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to comment that we always have to think about that autism is a spectrum disorder. So on one end of that spectrum, you have people who are very high functioning, and I don't usually like to use that word, but for this event, I think it's easiest to, you create people who go to college, get married, drive cars. They have the same diagnosis as the people like my son who are 24/7. So I think you always have to understand the individual. Who is it you're teaching? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? It's not cookie cutter. And I know Tammy knows this after all her years of experience, that it's not like you can pick up a book and go, okay, here's the curriculum. You know, many times people adjust the curriculum based on the person's needs and supports. Sometimes it's better to have a parent there while the child is learning to swim versus Tammy's going now.
Nope, there's not. No, parents should not be there.
Okay, well, you're the expert in that, so go for that. Okay, but I'm just saying there's differences within the special needs population that we have to really understand. It's not one, like I said, one cookie cutter solution.
There's a lot of stereotypical things that like I teach my instructors what to look for, because to be honest, a lot of parents, when they enroll in our swim program, may not be so forthright in that their child even has a disability. But then we'll see typically that there's some things that are kind of going on within the class. And so my staff knows that they will teach to the autism, and if other things aren't working, if the typical way of teaching a child is not working, then they'll kind of lean towards working some of the techniques that we do with the kids with autism. But overall, all these techniques work great with toddlers too, because you have to remember a lot of the kids that don't communicate when they're younger anyways. They don't have good language. So a lot of what we do with the visuals just really help. And there was a question that I saw somebody had put up there. They were asking about the pool temperature. And at my swim school, we keep the water warm between 90 and 92 because, and you're going to think, you're like, oh my God, that's so warm, but it's really not. It's just kind of comfortable and it takes the edge off. So if you were to jump in an 80-degree pool and you're 5 years old and you're learning how to swim, you're going to be pretty uncomfortable from the get-go. So when we teach, we want to make sure that the kids are comfortable so they're retaining the information and they progress a lot faster. So that's why we keep our swimming pool 90 to 92 versus like a lot of swimming pools will only be like 80 or 82, which you think is warm and they'll say is heated, but it's not really when you're in an instructional setting. So to answer the question about the pool, because I guess the child was going back and forth from the pool and the jacuzzi, probably guessing the pool was pretty chilly and they would rather go in the jacuzzi. So if you can get your pool a little bit warmer, you might have better success. So.
Thank you so much. So we are just at time. So I think what we've been able to do today is sort of highlight this challenge, the associated risks and the benefits, we've identified that there's training that's available, or opportunities for swim instruction for parents, training that's available to strengthen the infrastructure of swim instruction that can accommodate individuals with special needs, and that there's funding available with some work, of course, to support municipalities and nonprofit organizations to expand the ability to train and meet the needs of special needs individuals. We also identified some gaps, that there's gaps in terms of data. There's lots of data with respect to individuals with autism, but less data around drowning risks for cystic cerebral palsy, Down syndrome,
Right.
etc. I think that's something we need to be looking at. I know some people will need to drop off, but I wanted to ask just one final question of each of you very quickly. Any advice for us as a coalition to be thinking about how we help carry this work forward? Very briefly.
I think that it would be great if cities would do some type of autism special needs training and bring in trainers and grant money so the swim instructors don't have to pay for it. It's basically that you have the age range of the swim instructors, and they're not going to be forking out a couple $100 for a training here or there. They need it simple, they need it cheap, and they need it easy. So it'd be great if municipalities decided, oh, hey, you know what, let's do a grant. We bring all these swim instructors in and we provide them very low cost or no cost training on these topics.
Right.
Very good.
One of the other questions that came in was understanding the criteria for the funding available via Autism Speaks. So what we can do is drop that in an email so that people have access.
I'll give you the link on it. It's on our website. Yeah.
Okay, great. Just any advice for us, Marianne,
Well,
just very briefly. In there.
I really liked what Tammy said in terms of, you know, this should be a question to parents in interviews, or if you're going to a new, does your child swim? Does he know how to swim? Has he had swimming lessons? I mean, that often doesn't come up when it should be top of the list in terms of what the child's activities that they enjoy, where do they go in the community, what do they do? Because that will trigger, obviously, oh, he doesn't know how to swim, I haven't been able to find an agency to help us. That will obviously, whether it's a case manager or someone from the regional center, that's their job to help find families, places that they can access swimming lessons. There is help out there. It's not that far. We believe and do our best. We want every child with special needs to swim, to learn how to swim. And overall, that's the overarching theme here.
Well, listen, I want to thank Tammy and Marianne for generously giving of your time and expertise. For those who want to get in touch with either one of them, we've dropped in their email addresses. So feel free to reach out directly to them, or we're happy to facilitate that connection. Again, this webinar was recorded, so it will be made available, and we encourage you to share with others for whom you think this will be interesting. I want to thank everyone who joined, and appreciate you for taking the time on this to discuss this important topic. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Matthew.